Hi guys, Sarah here. Today we're going to be doing chapter 9, pages 182 to 186. This chapter focuses on alcohol, and it started off talking about fermentation. So the Neolithic humans discovered booze. Berry and berry wine was used in about 6400 BC, and then grape wine was used from 300 to 400 BC. They called this mead. So mead was made from honey, and it was also believed to be the oldest alcoholic beverage. Early use of alcohol was worldwide, so it was used everywhere. So fermentation is the basis for all alcoholic beverages. It's when yeast acts on sugar in the presence of water, and what this does is it recombines carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen of sugar into ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. Fruits were used to produce wine. However, when making this, yeast can only survive in up to 15% alcohol concentration before dying. So most wines are about 12%, but theoretically they can be up to 15% alcohol concentration. So while fruits were used to produce wine, grains were used to produce alcoholic beverages, such as beer. So grains contain starch instead of sugar. So in order to use grains, they had to convert the starch into sugar before fermentation could begin. They accomplished this by making malt. So malt contains enzymes that convert starch into sugars. There was also a correlation between the sugar content and the alcohol content. The lower the sugar content in the grain-based beverages was related to a lower alcohol content afterwards. And typical American beer contains about 4% alcohol. They also talked about distilled products. So this is used in order to obtain alcohol that has a higher than 15% alcohol concentration. So it's a process when a solution containing alcohol is heated and then the vapors are collected and condensed into liquid form again. It's believed that this process of distillation was discovered in Arabia in around AD 800 because alcohol comes from the Arabic word meaning finely divided spirit. Only fermented beverages were used in Europe until the 10th century. Italians first used distilled wine, and they also used it for treatments for illnesses such as senility. And they named alcohol the water of life in the 13th century. This was done by a French professor of medicine. Europeans distilled wine into brandy wine. Brandy wine was a Dutch term for burnt wine. And then meanwhile, Irish and Scots distilled malted grain beverages into whiskey. And then whiskey also means water of life in Gaelic. And then the book moves on to talk about proof. So proof is used in the US and it refers to the alcohol content of distilled beverages. So it's the percent of alcohol by volume is about half the proof number. So for example, if you have a 90 proof whiskey, it's 45% alcohol because 90 divided by 2 is 45. The word proof was developed from the British Army procedure to gauge alcohol content of distilled spirits. So to do this, they poured the liquid over gunpowder and it would ignite. But it would only ignite and cause the poof noise of the gunpowder if the alcohol content was 57 or more. So the final part of the chapter that I did focused on beer. So beer was made by adding barley malt to other cereal grains. And then these enzymes in the malt would change starches in the grains into sugars. and then they would filter out the solids before they added the yeast in. So there are two broad types of beer. There's ale and there's lager. US today mostly sells lager, and lager comes from the word lagern, meaning to store, from the Germans. Modern lagers are made using bottom fermenting yeasts, cool temperature, and slow fermentation, while ale is the opposite. It uses top fermenting, warmer temperatures, and it has a shorter fermentation time. There's also more flavor of malt retained, which gives ale a stronger taste than lager. And then you must remove the yeast through pasteurization, and imported beer has become increasingly popular over the past 20 years. Okay, this is chapter 9 on alcohol, and I hope it helped a little bit, and I hope you guys had a good weekend, and I'll see you next week. All right, thank you. Bye.